It's a hard day's late night with Ira. Every night it's feeling alright. It's a hard day's late night with Ira. Why not come over tonight? We talk about everything under the moon. Your favorite cartoon, a song you love. You never really know just how it might go. Why don't we get things started? It's a hard day's late night with Ira. It's a hard day's late night with Ira. It's a hard day's late night with Ira. A hard day's late night with Ira.
Tonight's episode of A Hard Day's Late Night with Ira is brought to you by our new sponsor, the Queens County Board of Tourism. And of course, you know their slogan, Queens, huh? You're taking a chance. The Queens County Board of Tourism. Thanks, guys.
Jim Babjak, Tex, as he was often referred to on stage, is the Peter Buck, the Peter Townsend, certainly, and the Mike Campbell, if you will, of the Smithereens. Tasteful, aggressive, instantly recognizable, and could wrangle a jangle out of a Rickenbacker like nobody's business. He was kind enough to speak to me from his home deep in the heart of New Jersey. So Jim Babjak, first of all, let me just quickly just thank you for saying yes. And what I'm doing here is hopefully this is going to be an episode, maybe the second one of a podcast that I am calling A Hard Day's Late Night with Ira, which I'm trying to combine my love of just whatever with the Beatles. We might talk about the Beatles. I know that's a topic we can both probably expound on. So we might get to that a little bit later. But the idea, the second episode was really about my tenure with the Smithereens, which was really central to me. I've told you this many times, and every time I see you and every time I see Dennis, I kind of get down on my belly and thank you, because it's absolutely true. Like the experience I had working for you guys from I think it was late '93 to about mid '95. Was so important to me as an individual, my growth as a musician, my understanding of what it means to be a musician and what my purpose is. So I'm gonna every time I see you, I'm gonna say the same thing. I'll never thank you enough. So I'm gonna start by groveling, and I'm thinking, like, now, having had the experience, I myself find myself 25 years in to being a member of a band, which to me is pretty astonishing. 25 years. I left you guys in '95 to join Not a Surf, really, and our first record came out in '96, and here we are, 2021, 25 years. Bang, gone like that. So, but you guys, it's amazing, right? So, but you guys started in like 1980?
Yeah.
So you're looking down the barrel of like 41 years.
Well, and it goes further than that, because
sure,
Dennis and I started playing in '71, and Mike started playing bass in '75.
Holy cow!
So by the time we met Pat in 1980, we already had a sound,
Right.
And the two things blended. But I remember when you were on the back of the tour bus listening to the Not a Surf stuff. I don't know if it was demos or if they had a previous release.
Yeah, it was kind of a little bit of both. Yeah.
We were all excited. I was excited for you. To go and join that band.
Yeah, no, that was a really exciting time for me too. I remember it really very clearly, and playing them. Like, I get, all over the years, you hear bands demos, you're like, that's not bad. But when I heard these demos, I had the same kind of reaction, like, man, this is really, really good stuff. It's really enjoyable, and you can listen to it over and over, and that's how you know a good band from an all right band. Like, if you can listen to the same song over and over, and that's how I felt when I heard those songs too. And I was so happy to. That tour was amazing. That the tour that I'm recalling, and again, that would have been, I would have gotten that cassette from them at the end of 1994, and then come on the road with you guys in 1995, which was a big.
Oh, you were.
I think that's yeah. So okay, so let's go back to this is what I remember, and I'll go back and like your history with Dennis and Mike. My history goes back with Matthew and Daniel goes back 10 years before I joined the band as well. I initially met them when I was a member of the Fuzz Tones, which was between 83 and 85. Again, like about a 2.5 year tenure.
Oh, so that's the connection
And
because of Chopper.
Exactly. And Kevin was a roadie for those guys. And then we became friends because he lived in the same neighborhood basically as I did. And so we were, after shows, like he'd drive me home or I'd drive him home or whatever. And so we became pretty fast friends. And then, so I had known him since, let's say, 84, 85 when I joined the Fuzz Tones. And he came with us on my first European tour, which was opening for The Damned, which was like an incredible experience. That's going to be a whole podcast, I think, in and of itself. And then he called me, I guess, around 1983. I'm guessing because I don't have the date, but and I unfortunately can't ask him. But so he says, the Smithereens are doing these shows. You want to come do a drum tech thing? And I, of course, knew you guys' name from, I knew Blood and Roses and all that stuff. But the most pivotal Smithereens moment before actually meeting you guys for me was, I remember it was like a Kennedy got shot moment. I was in my mom's car. I was driving down Woodhaven Boulevard in Queens, and onto probably WNEW came Strangers When We Meet.
Really?
Yeah, I'm guessing it was NEW because that was the kind of thing they might do, but it might have been LIR but it wasn't PLJ, and it wasn't whatever the other one was, but it could have been LIR or maybe been one of the great big New York stations that I listened to in my mom's car. And out of the radio came Strangers When We Meet, and I can still remember the feeling I got right now. I'm getting kind of goosebumps thinking about it because I'm like, this is like the greatest song I've ever heard. Like every element of everything that I like is all baked into that song. The big triplet ending at the end. Dennis puts in the big pop, 3 against 4, Hal Blaine, like everything you love. The Beach Boys are in there. The Beatles are in there. Everything. It was like a great
the kitchen sink.
No, it was fantastic because like those early Raspberry singles where like you got the Who in there and the Beatles in there and the Stones are in there. They were able to bake it all into one magic thing. And that, to me, that song really went through me like an arrow. So when he called me, I guess that was a couple of years later, I jumped at the opportunity, and I'm glad that it went well. And for the next, I guess it was a year and a half, we worked together. I'm trying to get the timeline sorted out because it's kind of, I'm sure, I don't know how your memory is. Mine is pretty spotty.
It's I mean, I remember that tour.
Yeah.
Well, because that's when grunge was really big, and we were kind of that was our, it was a major tour for us, but I felt things changing drastically. But
yes, yeah.
I'll let you continue.
No, but I know that's because this is part of the interesting part of the story. It was an interesting time for you guys because. Yes, the times they were a changing. Yeah, and there was a lot of there was tension. There was like the band getting dropped from Capitol at one point. I think we were on the road, maybe. There was some stories where we were on the road and you were dropped like unceremoniously, like while out on the road. That was later, I think, maybe though.
Yeah, I remember a Capitol rep came out to one of our shows and he didn't know that we were dropped from the label.
Oh,
so
Lord.
Halfway through the conversation, we say to him, I forget his name right now. He said, "Oh, by the way, we're not on Capitol anymore." But
and he went white and picked up a beer and walked out.
No, he stayed. He was good. He was good about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a weird time. And I remember there was, tension. There was sometimes tension. Do you remember when you first started working with Kevin? Because I don't know his history before I came in with you guys.
You know what? I don't remember the first time, but it had something to do with Hanty's studio in Hoboken or something. Uh-huh. I think Kennedy recommended. Well, you know what? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But Kevin Chopper, a.k.a. Chopper,
yes,
is like one of the most interesting people I've ever met.
Absolutely.
And haven't met anybody since.
No, you'll never meet anyone like him.
No, he was really unique.
Yes.
I mean, it's so sad that he died so young, but God.
Yes. Yeah, he was a very complex individual, and I loved him immediately because he was all things. Like he loved high culture. He was the only guy I've ever met to this day. We'd go on the road wherever we were, no matter what we had done the night before, how late we were out. He got up at like 8 o'clock in the morning or earlier, and he went to the museum. And by the time everyone else was like cracking their eyes open, he had come back after 3 hours in a museum having sketched out. He would sit there and like sketch things and come and write these beautiful. Ever see anyone with better handwriting than that guy? I mean, it was
and his drawings
and
too.
his beautiful drawings. They were remarkable.
And poems.
Yeah, he was a great. I don't think I know his poems, but he wrote beautiful. I was an amazing artist. But he was the kind of guy who was at home in a museum, or you could take him to a tractor pull, and he would have had just the same amount of fun. Like, he was not a snob. He loved high and low culture pretty much equally, I think. Really unusual. Really unusual. Had a very dark sense of humor.
You know what I find interesting? When we did Saturday Night Live, after we were on, there was an episode with for Wayne's World, Tom Hanks playing a roadie, I could almost swear that
God, you think
he must have gotten that from Chopper, because we were on a Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and Tom Hanks was the host, and I know Chopper was there because Chopper gave him one of my guitar picks. And if you watch the video,
I might have been
Tom Hanks.
I might have actually been working that gig. It's possible I was on that gig as well. Go ahead, keep going. Tom Hanks is playing with the pick the whole time he's doing the interview with Jay Leno. So I'm wondering if Chopper made an impression on him to do that imitation, because it seemed just like Chopper. You know, he was a very particular character, and you know, it's funny. I know that most people found him rather intimidating and gruff, which is how he came across. I mean, but I think half of that he put that on. Like, he was really good at putting it on like armor. He was like a physically intimidating sort of fellow, but I knew him so well. I was hardly ever. I mean, he slapped a drink out of my hand once. That was the most intimidating he ever got toward me.
I witnessed that.
I know. That was really out of character for him, toward me anyway.
That drink flew all the way across the room.
Yeah. If he expressed that kind of outward anger, I rarely ever saw it. I mean, I see him get angry or upset about various things, and I know that he had I remember reading recently, I don't know where, I was reading something written by Ben Folds. Who for a short time was opening with his band before their first record had come out. They were on the road with us, and I don't know if you remember, but it was remarkable because they had they traveled in a van, I guess, and a like a cube truck.
Yeah, Norfolk, Virginia. It was at the Boathouse, and he was carrying his piano in sideways.
That's right. Every night they took the grand piano in and out, and they would knock the legs in and out of it with mallets. Put it up on stage. Ben would tune it by hand by himself, and then at the end of the show, they'd knock the legs out, and the five guys would like hump it back into their van. That was a pretty astonishing piece of work they were doing night after night to have. You know, he wasn't going to sit there behind a Nord. You know, he wanted the grand piano, and it was great for the show. It was fantastic. It sounded amazing.
Yeah, I still have the demo cassette that their manager gave me.
They were so
great.
Good. They were so good. But I think Kevin was unamused, and the story that Ben told is that he blocked their ability to even enter the venue. He kind of put himself physically in front of the door because he wouldn't want. No, I don't want you loading this piano on my. You know, he picked up Pat's "Get the hell off my stage." I think Pat he really adopted that ethos very early.
Oh, he sure did. Oh my God, he was pissing on his territory. That was what he was doing.
No, he was kind of territorial. He took really good care. Like, I remember how he would work, this diligence that he took every day. I've never seen anyone do it. Like, changed every battery, changed every string on every guitar, if I'm not mistaken, no matter how long it had been played. It was not. And he used to tell me that they're not my guitars. He's just letting me use them. And when I got my 2 brand new Telecasters for that tour, he wrote my kids' names on the headstock. Oh my God, really?
Without even asking me, and they're still on there.
Wow.
So it's his handwriting on there.
Wow, that's amazing. I remember spending a lot of time with him, and you guys had lockers at SIR. Where you guys probably rarely ever went, maybe to rehearse it occasionally. But Kevin would go there like almost weekly, and he'd invite me along, and he would go and maintain. He'd open that thing up, and it was like a huge garage full of, amplifiers and drums and stuff you did use, stuff you used to use. And he'd go through everything and make sure everything was in working condition. He was super diligent about all your guys' gear in a way that was usually only, I am very diligent about my own gear to this day, but I don't think anyone does what I do with my kit. But it was really remarkable what he was capable of. And it was sort of a territorial kind of guy. I remember when we were out with him in 1985 with the Fuzz Tones, we were in a bad way because when we were headlining, we were fine. But then we found ourselves opening for the Damned, who were some really kind of hard nuts, especially their crew. They were not like, hey man, come on aboard. These were like hard, like these were like soccer hooligans, and they terrorized us actively. Like, get the fuck out of here, get your fucking gear out of here, you fucking cunt wank. And they would call us septics. Yeah, fucking septics, septic tank, yank. So so we were septics, and but they would really love to scare the shit out of us. That made their fucking day. But yeah, but so Kevin liked to stand up to them, and he was one of the few who could do it because we certainly weren't going to do it.
Yeah, but I still have visions of Kevin walking around a tour bus in his underwear. You can't unsee that.
No, that'll never be. Yeah. He was fantastic. Yeah.
But he was a sweetheart, though.
No, he really was. And I spent hours with him, like driving across country, just he and I in a truck or a van. And we were the kind of friends we could literally say nothing for 2 or 3 hours. It was totally fine. Right. Or we'd just go through the radio. That was the great thing. We'd find Pentecostal preachers in the middle of the night, or all kinds of crazy, George Noory talking about UFOs or whatever. We loved that stuff. We love to find things. Yeah.
Well, look, you're on the road and you're away from home, and it's just you got to do whatever to keep yourself occupied and amused.
Yeah. It's not an easy life, and who would think? Like 41 years. I mean, being on the road. I guess you got. I know the last time you guys. Well, no one's been out for the past year or so, but you guys are now still actively playing shows, which is great.
Oh, all the time. Well, before COVID, there hasn't been a month, even after Pat died, but
sure.
Yeah, there hasn't been a month really that we've been off the road, except for this year.
It's kind of it's hard. I love it. You guys are still the greatest. And those songs are immortal. They're just so great. I'm glad you guys are out. I can't wait to see you guys when you come back down to Florida. I'm going to come out. Because that's the last time I saw you. You were like just a couple hours north of me here in Florida. That was about a year maybe before Pat passed away.
Oh, that was still with Pat?
Yeah. I came, it was with Severo. It was playing bass, and it was someplace, I can't remember the name of the town. It was just north of me I can't remember. Yeah, it was a nice theater. And you guys played a great show, but it was hard to watch Pat like a sort of like one arm. He sang great and he was fucking hilarious.
Yeah,
but you could see he was at a great physical disadvantage. It was painful, but he had kept a sense of humor, which was.
Oh yeah, and it's we're all troopers. It's like Pat and I talked about this years ago. We're just going to keep going until we just drop dead.
Exactly. When you got something so good, why stop doing it? Like what I'm saying, like being a member of in a band with guys you love, playing music you love. I mean, there's no greater drug in the world. Than that. There's no greater feeling, right, of getting that sort of love of an audience, just like walking onto the stage and there they are, like they love you. You don't even have to do anything,
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
So did you, I don't know if you were in a band before Not a Surf. You probably were.
I was like the Fuzz Tones. There was a number, but not at the level that Not a Surf was at, no.
Right, so it must have been fun for you when Dennis came out. Dennis would come out. See, I used to do this, and you took over my job.
Did you really?
I used to go on the drums, and Dennis would come out and sing.
I never
Elvis.
knew that.
Yeah, and then I think I have a clip of it somewhere. I think if you look on YouTube, there's something in Florida where you're on drums.
Sure.
And Dennis comes out and does his Elvis and whatnot, and it's great.
Oh, I love it.
I think you're on there. I can't. I don't know what it is.
I've been in Fuzz Tones. I've been in the Fuzz Tones on tour in the 80s, and there was a long fallow period for me where I was just playing in New York bands. But it was an incredible thrill to suddenly like find myself in the kind of ostensibly in the driver's seat, sitting behind Genesis Kit for a couple of songs. It was just, of course, I loved it. It was a great honor. It was amazing. So let me get back to the timeline. So I joined around 93, I think. And that was a weird period because you guys were making, when did you started making Date with the Smithereens, I guess, right? Somewhere in 94 that was happening.
Yeah, because we were dropped in 93 and we had already started recording. We said, the hell with it. We're going to start recording an album, whether we have a label or not.
Sure.
So in between labels, we started recording. We have enough for 2 albums, right?
Yeah.
So half of it became Date with the Smithereens, and the other half we just found and we mastered it, and we're going to put it out as the Lost album. It's like another 12 or 13 tracks.
It's really still unreleased?
Yeah, it's never been released
wow.
before. And it'll be great to hear Pat's voice, really youthful. And I mean, the songs are of the same era as Date with the Smithereens, which some of it is a bit depressing, but
sure.
Pat was going through a divorce and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And being dropped from the label didn't help either. So
no, it was a downer for him, I know.
Yeah, but the songs are fun. They're great.
Yeah.
Even Miles from Nowhere, I thought should have gone somewhere too. But through time, I find even though songs weren't like hit songs, they become fan favorites.
Exactly.
And so it's like a phenomenon for me.
Yeah, no, I have the same thing happens with, Not a Surf has one or two things that might be considered, our first single was kind of a MTV kind of hit. But other than that, our hits are kind of amongst our fan base by and large.
Yeah, right.
Occasionally we get some traction when a record comes out. We get, we'll get NPR kind of play, which is great. And you're trying to get as much focus in that first week as you can. The industry, the music business is so radically different now than it was for us in the late 80s into the 90s. It was, changed so radically after the internet showed up. It's hard to really think it's even the same thing. But
it's totally different. And now with Facebook and everything, we're able to connect with our fans personally. Which is
true. That's a whole different. Yeah, there's whole different levels of like connection that you can get that you could never have gotten at that time. And so so you're making a date with Kevin. We talked about Kevin. And so I'm thinking about this, like the touring thing. Like for me, going the one of the most exciting things for me going out with you guys was it was the first time I'd ever been on a tour bus. I'd always been in vans. My first, I was in like a transit van or a 15 piston passenger Ford or whatever. And suddenly I find myself in these like 12-bed tour buses with you guys, which to me was like did you remember making that transition from one to the other? When did that happen for you guys?
I think it was around Green Thoughts, our second album, because the first tour we did in a van, back and forth the whole country. Yeah, it was rough.
I know.
I mean, talk about paying your dues.
Oh yeah, man. We did not sort of continue to do that for. I mean, we go back and forth. We went through a tour bus period and then back to a van period, and now in the States we mostly we cost effectively we tour bus it. But yeah, we did plenty of touring in the van with a trailer. Did you have a trailer or did you gear in the van with you? You had a trailer.
Yeah, we had a trailer.
Which is dangerous, too. It could be a lot of fishtailing, a lot of stories about bands.
And they had to back it into the lot in the hotel so people wouldn't rob it. Sure. All kinds of little things like that.
Yeah, no, yeah. I always remember, I'm always amazed that we did it all because we didn't have cell phones. We had to pull off the highway, call the venue. Hey, we're at exit 9. You had to find a payphone first, and then you had to call the venue. Hey, we're at exit 93 by 75. How do we get? And you'd have to write down directions and you drive there. And
we had phone cards, if you remember phone cards.
Sure, yeah.
And then we would do radio interviews from phone booths in the middle of nowhere on the road.
Yeah. It seemed probably desperate at the time, but now it's kind of romantic when you think about it. It's like the Old West.
Oh yeah, we'd stop. I remember on the first tour we stopped. I don't know if you remember Tommy Sherwood.
I know that name.
But yeah, he was our first driver, and I remember stopping at some roadside stand. We got to the hotel, and it was a real dump. It was like this cinder block motel or something. So we took the watermelons and just smashed them against the wall. We do stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys, you see, that was a great thing. You guys were like you could be rowdy together. Not a Surf never behaves like that. It's kind of fun. I think I would like that.
Well, it's not age appropriate anymore.
No, we couldn't. There's still a part of me that feels like, when I start playing the drums, I swear to God, I still feel like I'm 15 or 16. But
of course.
I mean, you can't.
That's what keeps me going.
Oh yeah, no, it's like it's like a time machine picking up your instrument, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Until you see the pictures, but
right. Well, you see yourself getting old and melting and turning, all the color leaving your body. Yeah, this is the march of time. Just on a side note, I myself I've always been an avid amateur guitarist, and I just recently bought myself a Telecaster. and I am loving playing it. What a beautiful instrument, man! I'm really getting into that, because I know I was talking to Rich and Kathy Firestone yesterday. Do you recognize them by name? They're big Smithereens fans. I'm sure you'd know them if you saw them.
Of course, they're dear friends. Yes.
So I was talking to them just yesterday. I wanted to get their Smithereens perspective stories, and they're so sweet. We were talking about this transition where, like, you never saw Jim without the maroon red, the cherry red Rickenbacker, and when you switched to the tellies, it was like a big deal. Like all the Smithereens gearheads in the front were like, "Oh, he's got a Telecaster now."
Well, I always hesitated because of Springsteen. Actually,
sure.
I didn't want to, because we're from Jersey, and I'm like, my God, I don't want to I don't want people to think I'm copying him or whatever. So what happened during the recording of one of the, on Date with the Smithereens, I was talked, I think Kevin might have talked me into getting a Telecaster, and I'm playing it in the studio going, wow, this really sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm going to get two of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I still use them. And the thing is, they're really roadworthy. I can fly with them, but I still use the Rickenbacker for driving gigs.
Yeah.
But when I have to fly somewhere, I'll take the Telecaster because I could just put it up on the plane.
Yeah. Yeah. The Telecasters are more. Yeah, they're sturdier.
They're roadworthy.
Yeah. Those Rickenbacker necks are different. And you've had that. Did you buy that Rickenbacker new or used? When did you get that?
No, that was my brother's.
Oh, wow.
My younger brother. I actually took it from him when we were recording Beauty and Sadness. He'd bought it. It's a 72 or a 73 Rickenbacker, and I'm like, you know what? I want that.
Yeah.
But I replaced it for him, and I gave him a 71 Strat for it. I gave him a Les Paul, and I gave him my original 12-string Rickenbacker for it. Oh, wow. Unfortunately, they were all stolen from his house.
Oh dear.
But anyway, so I still have that guitar. It's my talisman, is what it is. It's magic.
Yeah, it is.
That guitar is magic.
And can you describe in what way? I mean, I love this. I love the relationship between players and their instruments, because no one really understands. Like there's a tactile thing. Like, I'm a drummer, so drums can be hard or soft. They feel a certain way. Type of cymbals, if they're too rigid or if they're too soft. There's like a magic spot. How do you describe that when you? Can you describe that? What it is?
I mean, it's like an old shoe or an old shirt that just you can sleep in.
Right.
And I don't know what it is, but I used it on the first album, Blood and Roses, and all those solos, and it's just it's a magical guitar. Right. And on the first tour, I broke the neck on it.
Oh.
I broke the neck off of it, and
at the headstock, or where?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, at the bottom.
At the
bottom.
The body.
Between the body, the whole neck.
Oh, wow.
I broke it. I used to bash the headstock on Dennis's cymbals at the end of a song.
Oh, yes, I do recall that. That's very Roger Daltrey of you to do.
Well, we were in Kalamazoo, I remember, and
I love a story that starts with "I was in Kalamazoo." I remember.
Well, because that's where we were, and I remember it because I was frantic. It was the only guitar I had on the tour.
Wow!
And so our crew got somebody to fix it with epoxy, and then I swear to God, it's better than it was. And then I haven't had that thing intonated at all.
Wow.
Since then? So this guitar is the same as it was back in 1983.
So you had it epoxied in the afternoon and started playing it that night, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's insane, isn't it?
Well, I've heard that story before from other guitarists I know who, if you play, for example, Pauls or SGs, are famous for cracking, I guess, around the headstock. It's a kind of a stress spot on the guitar.
Oh, yeah, my SG is like that.
Yeah, but I've also heard a lot of guitarists say that after they're repaired, they can actually be stronger than before they're repaired.
Yeah. Oh, getting back to Chopper, I hate to do this, but
no. I'm happy to talk about Chopper all night.
We were on a Tonight Show, I think, and I asked for a 12-string Rickenbacker because we were doing. This is before you were with us.
Okay.
And we were doing Too Much Passion and Now and Then and stuff like that. And I called Rickenbacker and I said, I really need a 12-string. And they sent one to the studio where Jay Leno was. And when I get to the studio to do rehearsal, Chopper's like, okay, don't be mad. But I dropped it. and there's a big chunk missing from the neck.
Oh my God! What? How could Chopper of all people drop a rented Rickenbacker?
Not only that, he also dropped my SG, which is cracked also.
What, did they like fall out of a vehicle or something? That's really weird.
I don't remember that, but
that's something they
but
drop
I remember
off
that.
High surface.
Yeah. So all right, let's get it back away from Chopper.
No, that's amazing. No, because we were talking about your guitars and your relationship with them. So that's really something magical with you and that Rickenbacker.
And I still use it. I still it's out. I don't keep it in a case. I just keep it out and I pick it up every once in a while. I play every day now.
Yeah. Just because you want to, like to.
Well, because I'm home too, and I had a day job for 19 years. But and balancing that and recording albums and playing on the weekends.
It's not easy.
I had 6 weeks vacation, so I was able to play most of the time. Yeah. But I just actually lost that job. I was forced to retire because they outsourced my job to India.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So I'm actually,
wow.
I'm kind of, I guess I'm technically retired from the day job thing, but this way it'll give me more time to concentrate on what I do.
Right.
Best.
I'm making some music. You think you're going to do like a solo record or something?
Well, no, a new Smithereens record is in the work.
Oh, fantastic.
I'm working on, we're all working on songs. I'm working on songs with Robin Wilson and Marshall Crenshaw.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, that's going to be magic.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait.
Me too. That's going to be awesome. There's obviously no time frame. I'm not going to ask you about time frame.
And Mike's already on the bass parts. Like he's just on it.
Is Mike, when Mike came back in, which was around just before we lost Pat, he came sort of back into the fold after having he had been out for a decade or more, right?
Yeah.
And so was his enthusiasm was he like the same old Mike when he got back on stage?
Oh yeah, didn't miss a beat.
Did like he was yesterday.
Yeah,
still like the loudest bass player ever in the whole world.
Yeah.
I know. I sat behind his rig every night. I know.
Oh my God. I'm glad I'm on the opposite side. of the stage.
I was actually safer, but most nights I was safer behind it because there was so much air pressure going out the front of it. I can't even imagine. You would have gotten a haircut coming over to his side of the stage.
Yeah.
But all you guys had a lot of firepower. I mean, Dennis was a loud drummer, and you guys were both carrying double Marshall half stacks, both of you? You and Pat?
Yeah, but I mean, we just used the one head, really.
Yeah. No, he was using two heads on eight cabinets, as I recall.
I think that was just for show, really.
No, I think we plugged those things in. I don't know. I mean, I think it was two Guild-Hartke heads.
It was loud.
It was two GK heads on top of 8 4x10 Guild-Hartke cabs. It was, it was impressive looking. Even if he wasn't using the whole thing, it sounded like he was. It
was loud because now on Facebook, every once in a while somebody will say, "Wow, that's the loudest show I've ever heard."
Mike, that was the beauty of Mike, was that he was kind of a full body player. Like I have a bass player who's very similar in a way that he has a very physical relationship with the bass.
I do too. With the guitar.
Everyone does, but exactly, and that's the way to do it. So you have a very physical. Yeah, you're a very physical player too. Not everyone's that way. Mike was, jumping, dancing. Mike had a whole vocabulary of classic Mazzaros poses. Wide stance. He was just he was so completely absorbed. I mean, all you guys are, and that's again the magic of the Smithereens. That you guys were completely absorbed. There was no half stepping. Whenever the first time I saw you guys play together was in a rehearsal studio in Context or something down on Avenue A. And you guys were rehearsing to go out, and Kevin invited me down. And you guys played in that rehearsal studio like it was a show. There was no we'll just kind of wander our way through it. Or we'll just play the progression. So you remember the beginning, you remember the end. You guys plowed through that song like you were playing in front of 100 people. It was breathtaking, and it always was when you guys went on stage. It was always breathtaking because there was no half stepping. It was everyone was full on, and everyone was totally into it. No matter how the earlier part of the day might have gone, like you dropped all that stuff, and so that was one of the inspiring things, like sitting right there at Dennis's ankles every night, looking up, like watching. He says that Dennis says the thing, kind of chews his jaw as he's playing. He's sort of like he's in that zone, like he's grinding away and is sort of chewing his jaw and killing it, nailing it across the snare drum. That kind of cross stick style he has, that rim shot style.
Yeah, I remember when we were recording Beauty and Sadness, there's a film clip of it that I have from a home movie, and he has this like plastic straw in his mouth the whole time that he's chewing on.
Yeah.
Because, Dennis never smoked or anything, but I guess, I helped him keep time or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a sort of a natural thing he does. It's sort of like, it's one of those, I don't know what the word is, but as you're sort of concentrating on something, when you're playing your instrument, you're there, and I don't know about you, but I know that I'm kind of there and I'm also not there. I'm here and I'm trying to I'm doing what I'm doing and also kind of outside myself listening to it. It's kind of a weird alpha state. I don't know how to describe it when you're playing your instrument, where you're making music, you're listening to it at the same time. It's this kind of this weird Zen thing. And it's like driving a car. You're concentrating, but you don't need to, I think driving a car is a good analogy. Like you're kind of doing it, you're cruising down the highway, but you can also like look off to the side, or you can, you can focus intensely on it. Well, you don't want to look off to the side, but you know what I'm saying? Like
that's a little more dangerous.
Yeah. But as a musician, like you can also take a minute to like look around the room and look up in the, in the rafters and go, look at the smiling people's faces. You're not always like, just like, oh, I want to make sure my hand is in the right place. When you're a good musician, your hand goes to the right place, and then your brain can go there's a number of different ways you can go. I mean, I think so anyway. Great musicians.
Well, I find myself a lot of times closing my eyes and I'm listening to the band.
Yeah, exactly. And
and I'll open my eyes and I'll see the audience smiling, singing along. It's a phenomenal thing to experience.
Oh, it's a great feeling. I wish everyone could just like experience, I wish you could do it from a video game. I don't think you really can. Is that thing where you're creating it and hearing it at the same time. You're making it and listening to it like it's a record and going, man, my band sounds so good tonight. I should join this band. These guys are great. It's a very deeply satisfying experience that, I don't know, I guess other artists maybe feel that when they're dancing or sculpting or painting, maybe they get but I think you don't get that. The thing about music, unlike other forms of art like painting or sculpture, like are made in time. It starts now and it goes for 3.5 minutes and then it ends. It's temporal in a way that other art is not. So there's this exciting, that moment, like 1, 2, 3, go. And it's thrilling for an audience to see that. I'm personally, like I've been playing some local shows here in Florida with some little pickup bar bands, which is really fun. But I know what's going to happen. I'm going to go back on the road with Not a Surf, and we're going to be back out in somewhere in Europe or Paris or whatever. And it's going to be really emotional, I think, to be back on stage and with my band. Like, it won't be like exactly like it was. I don't know how it's going to be different. But I think once we get in front of an audience, I think it's going to be some really a deeply emotional connection. And maybe I'm sure you're experieing that too.
I'm kind of scared in a way.
Oh yeah, me too. I have a lot of trepidation.
I don't know what to expect.
Yeah, neither do I. It's and I feel like I don't know. Like I always feel like my life as a musician is this sort of constant. You never stop really paying your dues. There's always some sort of Spinal Tap thing you experience every day. Like, wow, really? Am I paying my dues again? I've been at this for how long have I been doing this? It never gets handed to you. You have to keep working for it, and
it's constant.
Yeah. So on some levels, you're always plowing ahead, plowing forward, and experiencing things you had not experienced before. And I think this is just like another in a set of things that you and I as musicians of our generation would never have expected. Every artist in the world had to stop dead in their tracks. I was in Europe at the time. I was in the middle of a European tour when I got pulled off the road. I jetted back home to New York. And when I landed here in Florida, and the lady drove me back home to my house, and she said, where did you just come from? As she picked me up in Tampa airport. I told her I came from New Jersey. I didn't, which is technically true because I had landed at Newark, but
right.
I didn't tell her that I had come from like France. and Spain and Germany and England, because she didn't. I don't think she would want to have had. She probably would have had to clean her. She would have hosed down the back of her car. Well, at that point,
right.
No one in Florida believed it then, and very few people believe it now. But that's a different.
True.
That's a different story. But yeah, I was
don't
like,
want to get into that.
Yeah, no, I don't. I don't. I definitely don't want to. I'll talk about drugs. I don't want to talk about politics. So it was a really weird time for us. Like we were in the middle of doing it, and promoting a record that we thought. I mean, I still feel it's one of the best pieces of music we've ever put out. And suddenly to sort of like be in the middle of it, you're promoting it, you're out there pounding the boards, and then go home. It was really devastating. And I don't know I guess we'll never really be able to make up that time. We have to sort of soldier on and, make something else now. We have to sort of make a new record. But I really feel that was really very hard for me to grapple with for months.
Yeah.
So I don't think we'll ever really recur. But I'm looking forward to a lot of positive and deeply profound emotional connections with audiences starting late this year and into next year as people start to hopefully be comfortable coming back out to see bands play rock shows.
Yeah, I'm at the same time I'm looking forward to it, and I am scared, like I said before, but I am looking forward to it. Definitely.
Yeah, it's going to be a thrill, and it's also going to listen. Flying in airplanes. I've hated flying on airplanes now for a decade or more. Like I keep saying, I love my job, but it's the commute that's killing me. Having to get there. That's the worst part. Once I'm there, I'm fine. So let's get to this crunchy story. I'd like to tell this right now. So I don't know if you want to start, but I'll start the story off, and then I'll pass the ball to you.
Which one is this?
This is.
Wait a minute.
Oh,
before we start that,
sure. Yeah.
We had some opening acts on the road, and I'm trying to remember. I know Watershed was one of them,
Watershed
right?
was one, who are a fantastic little sort of power trio. I don't know if you read that book that their bass player wrote, Joe Osterreich.
Yeah, Hitless Wonder by Joe
Osterreich, yeah, which is hilarious, which I really enjoyed.
I love their stage presence, and I hung out with them a lot. I took them to Barney's Beanery in California, and I was actually joking with them one time. I said, "Hey, every time I come to LA, there's always somebody famous, and." In the booth there was Quentin Tarantino sitting in the booth.
Yeah, exactly. That's only in LA, man. That happens. That's such an LA thing.
Were the Grays?
Okay, that summer was yes.
Oh my God!
Was on the Grays was a very weird band. They were amazing and weird because I've rarely seen a band get on as poorly amongst themselves as the Grays. I think there was just two of them. Well, there was four guys. All of them sort of they were kind of like a super group, yeah? I mean, it was John.
Yeah. Jason Faulkner,
who had been in Jellyfish, and John Bryan, who was a great producer, arranger, and Buddy Judge, I think, was the drummer who had been with. Buddy was the drummer with Till Tuesday. What's her name? Amy Mann.
Yeah, right.
And there was another guy who was. They were all amazing.
They were. I remember Jason wanted a drink with Dennis and I one night, and we were drinking chartreuse one night.
Yeah.
And that's 110 proof.
Yeah.
So he got really fucked up.
Yeah.
And I remember he kissed me on the lips.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And then later I saw him sleeping. He was next to the tour bus on the tire, against the tire, sleeping there when we were leaving.
I remember specifically when we first met Jason, he came onto the tour bus and was almost in tears because he missed being on a tour bus of his own so much because I guess in the Jellyfish they must have toured in a tour bus, and with the Grays they were kind of still winging it. But he was like so desperately happy to be on the Smithereens tour bus. That was one of the first things I remember about when first meeting him. But they were a remarkable band. But they were all great players and all interesting songwriters, and their record was okay, but it didn't really gel. Like even listen to the record, like the stuff they were playing live was great. The record seemed a little bit like they hadn't quite figured it out. I think they should have waited to make that record before they'd settled in. This is Very Best Years, I think. Wow, how do I remember that? Beautiful single, really catchy and beatly, and but unfortunately there was a lot of there was a couple of members in the band who just were kind of at odds with each other and didn't really. Mostly they were miserable. I remember there was a night where for whatever reason, and maybe this was a period where there was a period, I don't know if we want to talk too much about this, but Pat was having some issues. He was unhappy. He was taking an overabundance of chemical altering kind of things.
Yeah.
And there was one or two nights where he was incapacitated. And there was one particular night where, and maybe it was that, the Smithereens, and which was not like you guys, did not play the show at all.
What do you mean?
Well, I think it was me and Kevin were there, and the Grays played, but the Smithereens did not. That is,
oh, really?
That's what I seem to recall, because they had to sort of improvise and play a longer show. As a matter of fact, they called me on stage to sing like "No Matter What" by Badfinger, and they were just trying to like tap dance and make up time, because either the Smithereens, for whatever reason, were not. I don't really remember now what it was, but I had.
Yeah, I don't remember that either.
Yeah, because it's not like you guys to cancel completely. If Pat was I remember a night where Pat was, he couldn't really sing. His voice was all gravelly, and they gave him some B12, and he kind of, after the third or fourth song, his voice opened up. And
he was going through some rough times. I might have blocked it out.
Yeah. You won't remember a show that you didn't play, of course. So, but that was one particular thing. But what else? So there was the Grays, who were very interesting, and there was Watershed. There was the very interesting Sixpence None the Richer. It was a very. How did they end up with you guys?
I don't remember.
Because they were kind of like, I think their vibe was like they were kind of a Christian kind of rock band. Like they kind of came from that vibe. And they weren't very Christy, not their music was not really like that. But I think that was their background. Anyway, I thought they were very good. They were beautiful. They had great songs. I got to say, be honestly, there were two really adorable girls in that band. They were so beautiful, and it made going to work so great. Like me and Chopper, I'll have to look at Chopper all day. Oh, great! And now in the afternoon would come Sixpence, and you're like, these two girls would walk in, and the room would light up because they were both like lovely, in their early 20s, sunny, beautiful. Yeah, I was just like, I was totally in love with the both of them. That was nice.
It certainly was. It certainly was an interesting tour with all the different acts.
And that was it. So, was there anyone else? I think that was, and Ben Folds, of course, was there for a while.
Yeah, I really enjoyed them too. I enjoyed all the acts that we played with on that tour. So you were about to say something. Yes. Okay. So at some point during that summer, we were in the tour bus, and I believe that if my memory serves me correctly, Mike, for whatever reason, again, was not in the tour bus. He was either somehow he had to go somewhere, or I don't know if he had some sort of health issue. There was something, and he was not on the bus this one particular evening, and we were driving from A to B. Really?
Yeah, because it was you and me and Pat and Chopper. It was five of us, and I'm pretty sure Mike was not there, because I think he would have thrown a wet blanket on this whole thing. But we were listening to music, as we did. We spent a lot of time together in that front lounge watching movies, which we love to do, and listening to music. And that particular night, we were listening to all of our favorite records. I remember we listened to the first Elvis Costello record, My Aim Is True. Yeah. We were listening to some, I can't remember what the other one, but I remember around the time that Live at Leeds went on, I believe it was you said, "Hey, I have a joint in my bunk. You guys want to?" And I think Kevin was not one to smoke. I don't think he smoked cigarettes, but he was a pretty straight shooter. My drug history was zero. Like I started drinking alcohol when I was like 28. I was never interested in alcohol, not really. Even to this day, I drink a couple of beers and I'm fine. But alcohol was not my thing, and I certainly never smoked cigarettes. So I didn't know how to really inhale anything. But here I was in a tour bus. Kevin was sitting next to me, giving me the evil eye, and you came out like you were so thrilled. You had this teenage rebellion in your eyes, like, I've got a joint in my bunk. So he pulled it out, and I don't know. Dennis is not really his thing to do either. I don't think that Dennis is a pot smoker. But maybe you and Pat, and then you stuck your hand.
Pat wasn't either.
Oh, really? So it was just you? It's you and me? That was it?
I think a fan gave that to me, and which they did all the time back then.
Right.
And I wasn't a pothead.
No, I've never. You guys were drinkers. If anything, you guys were like beer drinkers, right? I mean,
I rarely smoked pot, but I figured, okay, I'm not home. I'm not with my kids.
Yeah, and luckily for me, and I know you tell this story sometimes, like you feel somehow guilty, and you shouldn't feel guilty because you did me a favor. So no, it really did, because this was like, if I was going to have the first like moment smoking weed, like this moment, like in the tour bus, listening to Live at Leeds with the Smithereens, like you don't get a better smoking pot story than that. I mean, that's fucking classic, man. So you came out and you handed me the thing, and I tried my best to get a lungful of it, though I wasn't really very good. But I got just enough in my lungs that about a minute later, again, we were listening to Live at Leeds, and I was going, wow, listen to the fucking bass.
Right.
and that's the kind of thing that you wouldn't notice in a normal world, but when you're smoking the pots, like you start to connect other things, and you start to hear beneath and between and below and above, and you hear. I'm like, oh, is that what this fucking drug does? Sign me up. This is exactly the drug I've been looking for.
Enhance your concentration.
Exactly, and you hear it could have unlocks a certain thing in you. I mean, if you don't overdo it, but it unlocks a certain creative mind if you allow it to, where you start to make other connections. That you might not have made in any other way. It's a wonderful drug. If you, again, all drugs are good if you don't abuse them. They all have their place. I'm a pro drug person in that the only problem with drugs is people not taking the right amount of them. That's the problem.
Right. Well, and heroin is not
well,
good.
Yeah, no, heroin. I don't mean hard drugs, but typical recreational drugs that.
No, I wouldn't even put that in the same category.
No, that's another thing. That's I have my personal theory about heroin is that some people have some inner pain that they just cannot deal with, and this is the only way to dull that thing, whether it's some sort of childhood abuse or something really dark. And that to me seems like the reason people go toward heroin is there's just something they just don't want to talk about, they don't want to deal with, and being medicated in that particular way must sort of block you off emotionally from emotional pain. It sort of makes that go away. That's the only thing I can imagine. Like I remember being on the road we were lucky to be on the road with the great Elliott Smith at one point before he passed away. And I don't know if you're familiar with Elliott Smith's work, but but it's very confessional and beautiful. And we were very very small recordings there, and all very Beatley too. Huge Beatles fan. And I have a great memory of Not a Surf ended up on the road with him in France, where our profile was actually bigger than his there, so we were sort of co-headlining, which we were in awe of him, and we couldn't believe that some nights like he was opening for us, we couldn't really deal with it. But there was a night on a weekend where we ended up at we had a night off and we went out and we ended up at a bar and we asked the bartender and he put on like Rubber Soul, and the 5-6 of us sat around the table. Us and Elliott Smith all singing along like harmonies, and the harmonies that weren't there to Rubber Soul. Like you just don't. That's like one of those memories. I just can't believe it.
Those are great moments, and I had many of those moments.
Yeah, it's like at the top of your head. What's the first thing that comes to your head like that?
Oh, geez, I was in New Orleans one time, and the Kinks. There was a song from the Lola album, not Lola, but something else from that album that came on, and Mike and I are just singing at the bar, and just moments like that.
Yeah. It's magic stuff. I remember. I want to talk to you about a Dave Davis story in just 1 minute, but let's finish this story. So, I think I did finish the story. So the bottom line is, you pulled out this joint, and that was my first time smoking pot, and that for me was like a pivotal moment, and I am eternally grateful to you for that, because it really did change my life, I think, in a positive way. Listen, have I smoked too much pot at certain times? Yes. Have I ever driven into a tree? No. I've never. I don't smoke that. It hasn't ruined my life. It's actually, I feel it's actually contributed like positively to my life. So
I'm glad, because then I'd feel really guilty.
Yeah. No. I don't want you to ever feel guilty. I want you to know that in your heart of hearts that you did me a favor. Because who was going to do that? Kevin? No way. So yeah, I mean, I guess I eventually would have found my way there somehow, but that's a great memory for me. I really love that.
I actually remember that time.
Yeah. Okay, so what else? We just talked about something else, and I got taken off the track. Oh, well, let's go back to. I want to go back to this because, like I said, the title of the show is "A Hard Day's Late Night." Because I was trying to sort of combine my love somehow. I haven't really figured out how to do it, but I figure if I talk to everybody about their relationship with the Beatles on some level, I'll be able to sort of glean something and maybe put it all together. At a later time, I'll put together like a Beatle-based episode. So I'm gonna grill you a little bit. Like I talked to Dennis.
Yeah.
And I said, tell me about your relationship like with Ringo. And the first thing he told me is that because of his age, he had been a drummer and aware of drums and drumming before the Beatles showed up. I'm a sort of a post-Beatles guy. The Beatles were always in the background for me. For Dennis, already had he was already into music and listening to recordings and into surf.
Everything.
And just doo-wop and
everything.
Right. No, he's an avid, I listened to his radio show the other day. It's amazing. I can't imagine what his basement. I remember seeing his basement when I met him in whenever it was, like 93, and he had that huge basement full of records. It must be, I don't know. Yeah. He must have an annex there by now. Well, how does he deal with it?
Right.
But, So I asked him, and he described his sort of how he came to Ringo and how he saw Ringo as this really unique player. Like most players, we'd never seen anybody play match grip before. This was a really new thing. Ringo was the first guy to really show up from a rock and roll band playing match grip. No one did that. That was kind of earth shaking, really quietly in and of itself. And so we talked about various things. So tell me. So I'm going to ask you along the same lines. Like, go back in time. Your first Beatle memory was what?
Well, it was actually the Ed Sullivan show. I was 7, but I couldn't play guitar then.
Right.
My dad wouldn't get me a guitar. I couldn't play guitar then anyway, but I started out playing the accordion.
Is that right?
And then around 66, I picked up the violin.
You come from a Polish family? Is that where you play the accordion?
Hungarian.
Oh, that's not too dissimilar. Okay. Eastern European.
Yeah, and my dad had an accordion, so naturally I took lessons. And coincidentally, Mike also took accordion lessons from the same teacher.
That's hard to imagine.
In Carteret. I didn't know Mike at the time, although we had our communion together when we were 7 years old at the same church.
Wow.
We went to the same church.
That's crazy.
And we had the same accordion teacher, which is really bizarre.
That is bizarre.
And I have a picture of us getting our communion. We're sitting on the front steps of the church with our big ears and everything.
7 years old. Unbelievable.
Yeah, so we had the same accordion teacher, but I got the bug around 68.
Yeah.
When I got my first, one of those portable 45 players.
Yeah,
and,
right.
And I was asking all the kids in my class, do you have any old Beatles records?
Right.
And
do you remember the first 45 you ever got?
Well, it was Love Me Do. This kid said, it's my sister's record, but I'll sell it to you for $0.25.
There you go.
So I got that. And then I also got I Feel Fine was the second one, which blew me away.
Right.
I mean, I would play it over and over.
Talk about a guitar-based single. I mean, that's the most guitar-y of all time. That riff.
That was the one. And I'm like, I got to get a guitar, man. I got
to figure out how to do that.
That's what got me, that song. And then, so soon after when I entered high school, I met Dennis, and he was looking for somebody that would want to play the Beatles or the Who or whatever. And I happened to have a picture of the Who in my notebook that he was sitting behind me the first day.
Oh my God.
Of earth science. So after class, he pulls me over in the hallway and he says, "Hey, you like the Who?" And I said, "Yeah, I like the Beatles too." And then we had lunch at his house, and then after that, we started playing together. It was incredible. And then he turned me on to all this other stuff.
Sure.
Like the Four Seasons, the Beach Boys,
right.
Endless. It's just endless.
Yeah,
I credit Dennis for my for everything musical that I have that I've ever done.
Really?
I attribute it to Dennis.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Oh yeah. Wow, and then we kept playing. We were always trying to form a band, but we could never find the right lead singer. And then
that's hard.
And Mike was our friend in high school, and he wasn't playing bass yet, but
bass accordion.
Well, he wasn't playing accordion then, but. He bought a used bass, and then I taught him how to play in my laundry room, actually, at my mom's house.
Yeah.
Can't Explain, and No Matter What, and there was another song I can't remember. There was 3 songs that I taught him on the bass, and then he went away to college, and he comes back, and he's like Mike, like he is now. He was playing Ramones records and Motown records, so he picked up he picked up like James Jamerson and Dee Dee Ramone and Paul McCartney and John Entwistle, all rolled into one, and he came back as like after a semester of college. He was like a world-class player.
That's incredible.
And then we kept looking for a lead singer, and we had a band called What Else, like kind of a take on the Who.
I didn't know that.
And
so what?
Yeah. And we actually did a couple of gigs, one at the park in Carteret, and then one at a couple of parties we did, and then and then we met Pat through an ad.
Right. And you guys were playing covers, I suppose?
Yeah, covers, and the only original I had back then was White Castle Blues.
Right, sure. The infamous White Castle Blues.
The infamous White Castle Blues, yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, those times were pretty incredible. And I wasn't sure if I was going to remain in a band either, because my dad had a bar, a tavern.
Right. Famously.
And my destiny was to become a bar owner and with my dad and whatnot. And then I just felt like this was my calling, and I had to follow it. I had to. Yeah. Despite what everybody was saying. Everybody's, how hard it is, and you're going to ruin your life. And,
yeah. No, I was lucky.
So I ruined my life because of the Beatles.
Yeah, that's how it's. We, like I said, we're in a very small. Lucky to have ended up in a very small club of musicians who, get to work and play year after year after year. I mean, so few, and listen, I don't know how you see yourself. Like, I'm a great drummer, but there's a million drummers better than me. Like, I'm just lucky that you find the right chemistry of guys. It's not about a particular skill set that you have above everybody else. It's like, my skills are standard. Our skills are, none of us are virtuoso, shreddy motherfuckers. We're just, we're really good at our job, but it's about the chemistry we have with other people. That's the final thing is like your chemistry with Mike and Dennis and eventually with Pat, my chemistry with Daniel and Matthew. That's what the X factor between you being a guy who plays the guitar and being like the guitarist in the Smithereens. Like, that's the X factor that you can't learn that on YouTube.
Right. You can't go to School of Rock for something like that.
No, and you can never plan for that. Before I became actively a musician in my kind of early 20s when I joined the Fuzztones, I had studied acting. I was going to be, I like the stage, so I was studying to be an actor, and I kept getting, everyone was telling me, man, don't be an actor, man, that's a hard life. You're going to have to be, no one works as an actor. You're always, you're a waiter, you're this and that. And I was like, yeah, well, I gotta figure it out. But I think after I went to high school studying acting, I was kind of still more comfortable as a musician. I felt I knew where I stood. As a drummer, I knew when I did a good job and I knew when I failed. Whereas as an actor, I hadn't quite gotten the hang of it. So I gravitated back toward being a musician. I'm glad I did, but I was just one of those people who liked being on stage. I was, in the school plays and all that stuff. So I was like, I was looking for an excuse to get on stage.
You know what did it for me, and maybe Dennis too, to a certain extent. We went to see Wings in 1976, and Dennis said, "Hey, there's this club in New York called CBGB's. We should stop by and check it out."
Yeah.
So after the concert was over. We were already in New York. We went to CBGB's and we saw the Talking Heads and Television.
Oh my God!
And then the Shirts and the Dictators and the Ramones.
Not on the same night.
No. And we kept going back to the club, and the drinking age back then was 18. So, it was easy. Actually, I was 17 the first time I went, and they didn't card me. So, it was a revelation because to be a musician, because I wanted to play in a band really bad.
Yeah.
And I never thought we'd be able to, seeing The Who at Madison Square Garden or McCartney or whatever, I didn't think that was possible. But when I went to CBGB's, I'm like, wait a minute, this can actually work.
Right.
Because these bands are getting signed and there's a new thing bubbling up. And
the energy was different. Those big rock acts seemed kind of unattainable. I think that was It was what's the word for it? It was just not intimidating, but I didn't think it could ever happen. And so seeing a band in a small club playing original music was just mind blowing. Right. And I'm like,
all right, this is it, man. This is it. We're going to go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a
That
great
was a turning
story.
point.
Sure,
It was a turning point.
I wish that's one of the things I regret. Kind of, I grew up in Queens, probably much closer to CBGB's than you guys were in Central Jersey. I could have gotten there probably right on the subway in 25 minutes. But for whatever reason, I was kind of a homebody when I was a teenager. I didn't really venture out that much. I went to school in the city, but I never stayed there. After school, I would go back home to the middle of Queens and kind of, I learned everything from the radio and from television. That's where I got my entire education, from records. But, stuff that I heard on the radio and stuff that I saw on, whatever, Don Kirshner's rock concert or, whatever, There wasn't really that much to see. There was I'd get the TV guide on Tuesday and who was on SNL and who was on Midnight Special and who was on Don Kirshner.
That was it.
Yeah, there was 5 or 6 places where bands, maybe some of the afternoon talk shows might have a live band every now and then. That was pretty unusual, but
that was rare.
Yeah, but it didn't happen. But yeah, that was it, like 4 or 5 places, and I would sort of circle. Oh, look, the Cars are going to be on, whatever. So. Yeah, and then there was some video shows. Like I lived in Queens where they didn't put cable in until almost the 90s. So a lot of it, there was like a video show that would happen maybe after Saturday Night Live at about 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning. There was like one video show, an hour of videos, which to me was like the most compelling thing I've ever seen in my life.
It was an event.
When videos showed up, like this is a new thing. And that's around the time that you guys were starting. Like it's right in that period where like this whole like new wave thing was happening. And yeah, it felt like an endless stream of possibilities for bands.
Yeah. And I didn't have any good equipment either at that time. I was, playing through this Fender Super Reverb and I wasn't getting the right tone. And I'm like, how do you get that? And then finally I discovered the Marshall, the Marshall amp, and it changed everything.
Right. Right.
It's like, all right, I found my home.
Right. You take one little turn. It's interesting. Like I remember reading about Harrison, who started, I guess randomly with the Country Gentleman through a Vox. But I think years later he looked back and said, why was that? That was a terrible combination. I should never have played a Country Gentleman through a Vox or whatever. Like, you learn over time, like, oh, I can control it. Oh, I have this pickup or that, pickups and things like that. You don't see it. At first it's just a guitar and then you get into the minutia. I'm still that way with drums. Too.
Back on our first tour, I remember people saying Rickenbacker through a Marshall and playing lead on a Rickenbacker is just not.
You're not
really
you're only supposed to play chords on it, right? It's like it's meant to be. That's what I think. People think it's like a one-trick kind of guitar. It's just meant to play jangly chords or like sound like something off a Hard Day's Night. But it's a very versatile instrument. I myself am kind of the next guitar on my list of like I would love to own is some sort of Rickenbacker. I'm not quite sure. There's a couple of models that I have my eye on, but I'd love to own a Rickenbacker because I think they make a beautiful noise and I think they're undervalued as guitars.
Well, yeah, the semi-hollow body that I have is just, you get great feedback from it if you can control it.
Right. Yeah. I love, that's one thing I've yet to, I never play loud enough to really experiment with feedback, but some of my favorite guitarists are, if you're familiar with Ira, another Jersey guy, Ira from Yo La Tengo.
Robin.
Exactly. No, not Ira Robbins, Ira...
Oh, right.
That's Robbins. That's another Ira. There's so many Iras. There's Ira,
I know.
Ira Flato. There's Ira. But you know the Ira I'm talking about. So,
yes.
But he's also is one of those guys who, like in a kind of a Neil Young sort of way, is really great at wrangling beautiful feedback out of a guitar, making it really sing.
I remember a review when I have to find it from Billboard. Somebody wrote a review of us when we were opening for Lou Reed at Radio City.
Nice.
And he described my guitar playing as reckless abandon.
Yes. That's talk about a compliment. That's fantastic. That's what you want. That's my favorite thing. Like I've been watching a lot of NRBQ. I've been kind of on an NRBQ kick recently. And I think that's
great band. They
specialize in this sort of reckless abandon. Every time they play a solo, it sounds like it's just about to fly right off the edge. And that's the Smithereens were good at that too, because you guys really leaned in. You didn't hold back. You were physically involved, and that's the great bands, who are completely committed physically. It always feels like it's just going to blow up at any second. That was what we saw in other bands. It was, I'm sure, like seeing The Who. It must have been like a controlled explosion.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine.
I remember we had a stint with it before we had a label. And before Beauty and Sadness, we played for 2 years with Otis Blackwell, who wrote songs for Elvis and Jerry Lee Lewis, and we were his backup band, and we ended up playing at the and we ended up playing at the Bottom Line, opening for NRBQ.
Wow! Oh my God!
Yeah, that was a fun show.
I bet. Yeah, the classic line. Was that the classic? They call it the classic line. With
yeah,
Tommy,
it was like
Tommy Ardolino on drums.
Yeah. Oh, he's great. He was great.
God, I can't imagine.
1983, I think it was. I wish I had recordings of this stuff. You know.
I wonder if someone out there might have bootlegs of that.
I don't know.
Somewhere.
People really didn't. You know, I don't think people were videoing back then. It was nothing.
No, maybe audio, but not. I'm sure video. Not at that point. Yeah, I've been on a kick, but that's one of the aspects of their band that I really love. This sort of this wild abandon that they seem to possess, even though, like, you know, you can play the same thing. Again, you know, there's a corollary between acting and being a musician. Like, you know what the lines are. I know that I'm going to say this to the other character at that point. You're going to play the same basic solo when you get to that point, but because you're in a different room and you're in front of different people, the energy.
Oh, it's always different.
It's right, and so the energy, it's like you're doing it new, like you've never done it before, and that's what I think people find that hard to understand. Like, oh, you've played that song 1,000 times. Doesn't it get boring? It never gets boring. Never.
No.
You'll never be bored playing unless you'll never get bored playing with an audience who is happy to hear you play a song. It just can't happen.
No. Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. I get it.
Okay, so here's the other story I was thinking about, because I brought this up a couple of times, which I think is hilarious. I wasn't there to witness this, but I want you to just simply verify, because I'm sure you were there. I'll tell you the story from my point of view.
Well, let's see.
This is one of my. Well, there's a number of Smithereen stories that I love. One has to do with. The other one, I'll get to the main one in a second, but the first one was we were playing at a place somewhere, I guess, again, this 94, 95, and it was someplace, it must have been like a dinner theater, and there was just like tables, and everyone was seated out at these sort of tables that were radiating out away from the stage. And you guys hit and you played a song or two, and in the middle of maybe the second or third song, I was back behind the amps, and Pat caught my attention, and he called me out, and as you guys were in the middle of whatever song, he yells into my ear. I lean into him, and he goes, get me 3 folding chairs. And I went backstage, and I found some folding chairs, and when the song ended, he called me out, and he says, give Jimmy one, and put one under Mike, and he sat down on one too, and he goes, sit down. And the 3 of you in the front line sat down, and he says, we're the Smithereens from New Jersey, and if you all are going to sit down, we're going to sit down too. And then he counted off, and he started playing some song, and the whole audience jumped up out of their chairs like almost simultaneously. It was that was Pat's amazing skill. Like, he could read an audience. I don't know, maybe he'd pulled that stunt somewhere else before. I don't know if he thought of that off the top of his head, but man, that worked like a charm. Everyone's like, oh, it's just ridiculous. Why are we sitting here? Because you launched into something. Like, you played something sitting down the way you could only play if you're standing up. It was like ba-da-da-da-da, and the whole audience like jumped up in the air. It was really beautiful. But the story I really want to tell is this one. You guys played at the House of Blues, I believe it was, in Los Angeles. And you invited Davis. You say Davis?
Oh, yeah. I invited him to that. Yeah.
And so you guys were excited all day to play with Dave. Everyone was. And I think you guys probably rehearsed some stuff at Soundcheck. And then the show came, and so I don't know if I don't know if you put it in the main set or maybe you waited for the encore, but however it was, you guys have been playing for a while, and then ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to announce a special guest, and here he is, and Dave Davis, applause, and he comes on, and Pat graciously walks off the stage and stands in the wings.
Yeah.
And so you guys play, I don't know, Death of a Clown, Love Me Till the Sun Shines. And once you get past those two, you're really getting into the weeds. You guys could have gone on for hours, obviously playing not only Dave compositions, but any Kinks compositions.
Yeah.
But after about 2 songs, I'm again in the same place, like sort of sitting at Dennis's feet. And I look back over my shoulder, and Pat's motioning to me, and I go backstage next to him, and he goes, this guy's ruining my show. I'm like, okay, well, what should we do? He goes, don't worry, I'll handle this. So you guys finish whatever song you're in the middle of, and he came off, and thank you. And you kind of ushered Dave off the stage, and you guys finished out the show, and it was great. But here's the part I didn't see, which I was told about later. As we were breaking down the stage, you guys went upstairs, and I guess there was like maybe a meet and greet, or someone wanted to take a photograph of the four of you guys and with Dave. And Dave was clearly not happy. I think he probably had a few to drink by that point. And and he tried to. What did he take? Did he try to like? I heard that he tried to sort of pull Pat down to his like crotch, and he said something. You didn't want me to play any more songs, huh? Something like that. Did you remember something like that happening?
Yes, I do. Dave, I
know Dave is a volatile guy. I know that's kind of how he I know the Davis brothers are drinkers.
We had met a few times before that, and we played with them at Boston Garden.
Right.
And Pat was like,
it's
pissed.
Yeah, it's not your show. He was right. It was his show. Like, I got a show to do here. Like, I got to finish. Like, if you suck all the energy out playing obscure Kinks numbers that the audience doesn't really know, like, I got to pick up where they left off. So I understand what his imperative was.
So what happened was I'm watching. So Pat comes back on, and we're doing an encore, and Dave's in the wings. Going like this with his hand. He's going like, hey, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Because Dave wanted to come out again for the encore.
Oh.
And
that.
Yeah, and Pat would let him. So when we after the show, we're upstairs and we're posing for a photograph, and Dave grabs him in a
headlock.
Grabs Pat in a headlock.
Yeah.
And they wrestle to the ground. I'm like, oh my God. What the hell did I do?
Oh my God, that is fantastic.
I'm in the middle of this whole thing, and I'm like, Dave, I'm sorry,
I didn't know they wrestled them to the ground. That is true.
Oh yeah, they were on the ground. I don't know if anybody has pictures of it, but
my God, that is hilarious. Because I got the story later. Like, we were down there just kind of breaking everything apart, and 15 minutes later, as people started to filter down, I got sort of I got a second or third hand account of this story, but. Remarkable.
Yeah, it's true.
I love it. Yeah, life's never boring on the road, is it?
Yeah, I can't wait to write a book, man.
It's not a bad idea. People keep telling me that the same thing. Like, all right, the stories you have, no one will believe you. You meet all these crazy people. Like, I can think about my life as a musician. All the individuals I've met. Famous and. I played with Screaming Jay Hawkins. I played with Joey Ramone. I played with Dave. I played with Ray Davies for a couple of shows. I think about all these these people that I've met over the years. What lucky people we are to have sort of rubbed shoulders, played instruments. Our first record, Rick Ocasek produced our first album. And then I was in a band with him. He asked me at the first sessions, he's like, hey, you want to play in I'm going to make a record. You want to play on that record? I was like, wow, what's happening? This is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife. Life is like that sometimes. You just can't believe, you're.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. I remember that time.
Yeah, no, we're very blessed. All right. Well, I don't know. I think I've covered all the ground. I don't know if there's anything I've missed. You can think.
Oh, geez, we could spend hours talking about it.
I'm sure. Well, but I got an hour and 15 minutes. I think we can edit that into. I'll get down to my 45 seconds of really tasty nuggets. But great. Well, that's it. I mean, I can't really think of anything else. If I think of anything else I really need to talk to you about, I'll give you another call. But
anytime, man.
Yeah. Well, Jim, I can never thank you. Thank you so much for giving me the time. I really, when I think back on that period, I just can't believe how lucky I was. And I thank God that the Smithereens were like my mentors for that year and a half, 2 years. It was really a stroke of fate. To my great benefit that I found myself working for the likes of you. So thank you endlessly.
No, yeah, and you were great. You were great on that tour. I look fondly upon that time.
I'd like to thank Tex, Jim Babjak, for giving me some of his time and, for just being the legend that he is. Good night, everybody.
It's a hard day's late night.